let's see which one it picks up automatically. Yeah, it picks up the gold mic, which is probably good. Yeah, that's the one that I want to use. All right. So how was the test? It was okay.
Well, the problem that I had was, well, among other things, but the big problem was finding the object that controlled the access to the last data or even any of the data fields in order
Okay.
to take that result and send it back to another screen.
Uh-huh.
So, but I figured you're going to go over that today. So
Yeah, that's what we'll be going over. Yep.
Okay. And I also had a problem with I renamed the file and then sent you the wrong file, and then I followed it up with an email that had the correct file. So I hope that you
Okay.
were able to see that.
Yep. As long as there's no change of time, in between, that's
Right.
okay.
Yeah, it just I just had to rename it because Apk Mentor doesn't allow a duplicate file.
Yep, that's
to be
correct.
uploaded, and it won't overwrite what you already have. And I had already uploaded and installed BootLogger from the previous day's class.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alrighty.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and take a look at this particular test, and let's see if the mic is working today. Well, apparently not. Oh, because the wireless thing was not powered. Now it is powered. Alright. So let's see if this works. Hello, hello. Hello, 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 hello. Okay, that's good. If you guys have not taken classes from Iraj Subseveri, then remember this, greeting from him. Hello, hello. That's what he says, when he starts a class. All right. So we'll take a look at this homework assignment. I may sound a little funny today because I have a sore throat on top of all the other stuff that goes on Monday. So I am a little bit sick, but the good thing is, it cannot be transmitted by the loudspeaker nor the projection screen. So as long as you guys stay over there, I think we'll be fine. Okay, so here's the starting point, which I have already shared with you guys in class. Okay, so it should be nothing too surprising, as at least the starting point. And then we'll just go ahead and upload it. Okay. Go, and I'll just pick one of the accounts here. I think this one may have it already. I can just go ahead and delete it. So let's allow.
Oh, Tech is back.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, we actually didn't get to email till almost like around 8:55 on Monday. I don't know why.
Really?
Yeah.
I sent it the first thing I woke up in the morning. I thought, okay, I wouldn't be able to make it today. So I thought I sent the email at about 7 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, like mine showed up like around 8:55. Like me and her showed up. Like, what's going on? And then I also checked the email. Wait, it just came 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Huh.
Yeah, it was weird.
Just straight.
You got it, and
Well, there was another student here who was on his phone, and he got it. So he was able to alert the two of us that you sent the email. So,
Right.
But that was about 5 minutes till 9 or something like that when he had checked his email. But when I checked later, it was dated or timed at 7 a.m.
yeah, I sent it as soon as I was able to determine whether I would be able to make it to class or not. In the hope that it will stop you guys from coming to school. If this is the only class you're taking, then you don't have to come to school, or at least not as early if you have other classes in the afternoon. But apparently, the delivery of the message was delayed, by the servers of some. So there's some kind of delay.
Could be, yeah.
Okay, well, when I have time, I'll go try to figure out, what exactly is the delay, because, That's just not, that's not right, you know, having to wait close to 2 hours, right, for the message to be delivered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it depends on when he was accessing his email. He was accessing it just before class.
Uh-huh.
So it may have been available, but if,
Oh, okay.
if the person doesn't
Why not you
access
check it all the time though? Because I have it on my phone, because my phone's checking it all the time.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so like that doing it all the time, it's at 8:55. That's not time for you to do that.
Okay.
That's a mystery.
It is. All right, so I just uploaded, you know, Mood Logger. I call it Mood Logger 1 because I already have another one. So we'll start with this one and then we'll follow the instructions and see how we can get it done. And don't hesitate to ask questions, you know, especially if it is related to your project. Okay, so if there are, you know, concepts related to the project you would like to ask, we'll go ahead and answer those questions as well. Okay, so starting with the instructions, use the attached file as a starting point, which I just did. I uploaded the file as a new project. Add a logger screen. Add a screen for the main logger. The title should be logger. It presents a date picker and a time picker to specify the time date of the log entry. It specifies a button to select a mood, and this button should start the mood selector screen that is already a part of the included project. It presents a label to indicate the date, time, emotion, and level of emotion, or intensity of emotion, if you will. More on this later. It presents another button to save the log entry. Okay, so we'll follow these instructions and just to create the logger screen. Oops, back to the browser. And that's what we'll do is we're going to add a new screen. Now how you call the screen here is not important. I'll just call this a screen logger. And here's a screen logger. But I do want to change the title to just logger. So the title here is going to be changed to logger. If you miss tiny details like this, it's not going to be a big deal. I won't knock off, you know, a whole lot of points. Okay, so the title should be logger. It presents a date picker and a time picker to specify the date, time, and then it presents a button to select a mood, a label to indicate the date, time, emotion, and intensity of emotion, and a button to save the log entry. Now, if you spend the time to make the layout look good, that's good, but it's not necessary. Okay, we just need all those components to be here, and you can arrange things in the most primitive way. It's fine. So we go to a date picker, drag it over. We pick up a time picker, just drag it over. We have a button. We have two buttons. So one button, a label, and another button. So we'll fix all of those captions a little bit later. Okay, so these are the 5 items that we need in order to get this screen going. So if I want to, you know, I can go ahead and change these things so it does make more sense. Okay, so date of entry, and then time of entry is the other one. There we go, time of entry. You don't have to do this because it was not actually asked in the project itself. I kept tabbing it, so maybe it would make more sense for me to move this to a new window so we can actually use the tab key to switch between the screen. Okay, so switching, that works. All right, so it presents a button to select a mood. So we'll just call this a mood selection or select mood. Okay, select mood. Now with a button, it makes sense to change the name of the button because otherwise we have 2 buttons and it would be harder for me to remember which one is which one. So this one is select mood, and then the other one is to save the entry. So save entry, like that. And then the label's job is only to display the time, date, and the emotion, and also the intensity of the emotion. So we'll just say, you know, not available at this point, or whatever you wanted. There's no need to select an actual default, but if you choose a default, that's good. Okay, save entry. All right, so now we have all of these items here. Let me check the description. The title is done. It presents a date picker and a time picker. It presents a button to select the mood, and it should start the mood selector screen. So I haven't done that part yet. Presents a label, presents a button to save the log entry. So there's only one thing that I have not done, which is when this button is clicked, it should start the other screen. So the first thing I need to do is to check the name of the screen, because that's what you need in order to start the screen. It is called Screen Mood Selector. So we go to Blocks, and we go to Select Mood here, and we want to start another screen. When you want to start a screen, it is in Control. So you go to Control, and you scroll down pretty much close to the end here. It is Open Another Screen with the screen name, or you can use a start value as well. I did not call for any start value in this case, so we can just use a plain start another screen. Now when you use this block, okay, you kind of have to supply the name of the screen, and let me see if it has a description here. It doesn't really show you, but I think in class I have shown you guys how to do this. The name of the screen has to be a string, so you have to use a string here, and then use the name Screen Mood Selector to be this content here. So we're gonna, oops, I just hit the wrong button. There we go, try again. Screen Mood Selector. There we go. So that should be it for the first part of the description, because that should just start the mood selector. Are there any questions about this part? Okay, it should be fairly straightforward at this point. Okay, so I try to break up the project into many tiny little parts, so this way there will be partial credit depending on which part people can finish. Okay, so next one is the level screen, which is also kind of not linked to anything else. So this one should be titled Mood Level, and you're free to choose the actual name of the screen as far as the internal name is concerned. It presents a list picker that shows the following levels as ordered. It presents a button to accept the level. When this button is clicked, if the list picker has a level already selected, use the selection as a result value and close the screen. So this means that you really have to close the screen and not to just not to start another screen. You have to close this particular screen. If the list picker does not have a level selected, then do not close the screen. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and first create or drag in the components. Create the screen, drag in the components, and then we'll make it work a little bit better. Okay, switch back. So we add another screen, and this time we'll call this one mood, more like intensity. Level is good, but intensity probably is a better name. And we'll need a list picker this time. So we put a list picker in here, and we're gonna have a button to accept that particular intensity. And let's see, list picker and a button. Okay, so I think I got everything here. We need to change the title of the screen itself to mood level. So mood level. And you can optionally change the text for the list picker. So I'll just go ahead and change this one, just so that it's more professional. Select a mood intensity. And then the button is for saving the mood intensity. So we'll go ahead and change the text on the button and say, just save is fine. Okay, keeps it simple. Okay. All right. So in the list picker, we want these to be the options, and there is a way to do it using a string. However, there's a problem with initializing the whole thing with a string, because some of these items have commas inside. And the comma is used in the text to separate the individual items. So I haven't really checked whether the backslash comma will work or not. We can give it a try, okay? If it does work, it's good. If it does not work, then we have to use another way to do this, okay? How many people try to use just the initialize the elements as a text string? Did it work? Did you try to escape the comma using backslash, and that did not work either? Okay, so I won't even bother to go with that. But there's another way to do this, okay? The other way to initialize the list picker, in fact, you have two places to do this. Let's switch back to this screen here. If I go to the blocks and you go to the list picker, there are two ways to initialize the elements. You can either do it as the initialization of the screen itself, or you can do it before picking. Okay, so before picking means, this is activated before it presents the list. So you can always initialize at this point. Okay. So we'll go ahead and initialize. And to initialize, we want to specify the elements, but this time we want to set the elements to a particular list. So if you hover over this block here, it explains how to use it. Or not. Okay, maybe if I hover over this one, it does. It doesn't explain it. Oh, okay. Let's go back to the designer. This has to do it. Go to list picker, click on the question mark, and go to more information. And when you go to elements right there, it allows you to initialize the elements as a list. Okay, so what you need to do here is to go to blocks and use a list to initialize all the elements. Okay. And I think we've got 5 levels, so we just need this list to have 5 individual items and use strings for each individual item. So there we go. 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, from here we can just copy and paste. So we'll copy the first one, paste it here, and just copy and paste the whole thing. Has anyone watched the Pixar movie called Inside Out? No? Okay, some people? Okay. All right, so now we have all the initialization done inside before picking. There's nothing to do with after picking because there's no action associated with it. We just have to code the button itself so that the button will check to see if anything is selected in the list picker. If something is already selected, it will close the screen. If not, it just won't do anything. Okay. So we'll go to the blocks for the button click. And this time we need a conditional statement because we have 2 ways of proceeding depending on something. So that means we have to go to control. We can start with if then, okay, and then we can add an else if we need an else. I don't think we'll need it. Okay, the only way you can tell whether a list picker has an item already selected is to go to selection index and see what the value is. So when you hover over, it will show you that the index of the currently selected item starting at 1. If no item is selected, the value will be 0. So that's our clue. So we'll pick out this thing and know that it is important. But we cannot just stick it here because it's not a Boolean value. It's not true, false. So in order to turn this into true, false value, we have to use a comparison and just say, is this not equal to 0? Because as long as it's not 0, it means something is already selected. So that's how we're going to do this part here. All right. So if it is not 0, then we can actually go ahead and return to the previous screen or to close this screen with a value according to the text of the midterm. So we'll close the screen with a particular value, or the value is going to be the selection of the list picker. So once again, we go to list picker 1, and then this time we just look at selection, but not selection index, because selection index is a number, selection is the actual text of the selection itself. So are we still doing okay so far with this code? Okay. So switching back to the instruction, I just want to make sure that I did everything as required here. When this button is clicked, if the list picker has a level selected, use the selection, not the index, as a result value and close the screen. So I got that. If the list picker does not have a level selected, do not close the screen. Well, if you look at the blocks here, if the list picker is 0, there's no else case here. There's no else branch to do something. That means the click simply does not do a single thing. Doesn't close the screen, doesn't do a single thing. Are we doing okay so far with this code? Okay, very good. All right. So let's go back to the code here. Okay, start with the logger screen. Have screen 1, which is reserved for splash screen. Start the main logger screen instead of the mood selection screen, which is the default. So that one is pretty easy. We switch to screen 1, and instead of starting with mood selector, we now have to start with the logger, which has a name of screen logger. So we just have to change this string to screen logger. That's it. That's the only thing we have to do to finish this part here, starting with the logger screen. We also want to link the mood selector screen to the mood level screen. When the bottom level mood / emotion is selected, where there are no items under that, which means it doesn't break down into sub items anymore. We want to start the mood level screen. When the mood level screen returns to this screen, close this screen, which is referring to the mood selector screen, with a result that is a list of 2 items. The first item is the mood or emotion selected, and the second item is the level or intensity of the emotion. So let's get this part done. I think this is where things start to get a little bit kind of more hairy. Okay, so we'll start to deal with this one. So switch back to the blocks here, and this time we're going to go to the mood selector screen. And it gets a little bit funky because now we have all these functions here, and you have to find out, okay, which one do we have to modify, okay? Some of these we kind of know that it's a good place to start, okay? For instance, in this particular screen, the main part is this thing here, which is our list view emotions, okay? Because all the main actions is triggered by this particular item. So what you want to do is to go to blocks and say, okay, what do we do with this particular thing, list view emotion? So if you expand this block, it expands to, this is after picking, okay? So we want to start with this, okay? It might call some other subroutines, but we start with this one because this is the user interaction that starts everything else, okay? And if you scroll down, you will start to see, oh, the original code has a whole bunch of actions that is labeled close screen with value, blah, 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 okay? But if you remember how the original app works, this will just kind of go, it will close the screen, go back to screen 1. That's how the original code works, to display the emotion that is selected. Okay, do you guys remember that part? Okay. Okay, so that means these 3 blocks are the ones that we want to modify, because these are the ones that originally closed this screen to go back to screen 1. So we need to modify these so that they will instead start another screen for the emotion intensity. Is that okay? So how many people located this part of the code and go like, okay, that's what we need to modify? It was a little hard to dig through. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we'll go ahead and do this part here. So we'll get rid of all of these. And instead, we're going to start the new screen, which is the mood intensity. Okay. So we go to control, and then we use open another screen with the screen name of screen mood level. Oh, intensity. I changed the name. Okay, so let's change this to intensity. There we go. And we just have to replicate this block a few times to replace every single instance that we had where it closed the screen. Okay, so this will start the next screen, which is to select the mood intensity. But the tricky part, or the trickiest part, is when the mood level screen returns to this screen, we want to close this screen, and this screen refers to the mood selector screen with a result of 2 items. So that's still the kind of the trickier code, because now when we switch back to these blocks, we now have to intercept the closing of this screen called screen mood intensity. So to do that, we have to go to the mood selector screen, and we have to use the other screen closed event to intercept it. Are we doing okay so far with this? Because when the mood intensity on level screen closes, it will raise a other screen closed event from this screen's perspective, from the mood selector screen's perspective. And that's what triggered this block to execute. Okay, let me see if I can display this kind of more graphically and see if it makes more sense. Let's see, go to VLC. And we'll go to this. It doesn't let me specify no audio devices. So I guess that's going to be okay. And we'll play. There we go. Oh, it's rotated. Okay, just have to rotate it the other way. Okay. Okay, now just need a pen. Or pencil. Here we go. All right. Refocus. Here we go. Okay, so we start off with screen 1, which is our splash screen. Okay. And we changed screen 1 so it doesn't start the mood selector screen, instead it starts the mood logger screen. So this one, it starts or opens the logger screen. Okay, we have done that modification already. The logger screen has a button to start the mood selector screen. So the logger screen opens up the mood selector screen. So this is mood selector, okay, which is where we're at this point. On top of this, we also added a mood level or intensity screen, which is started from here. So let's I just changed the brightness so white looks more like white instead of 18% gray. Does anyone take photography classes? No? Okay. When you look at the camera tries to make everything look like what? The auto exposure thing? No, white balance refers to, you know, okay, does it have a yellow tint? Does it have a green tint? I'm talking about the exposure. So when you take a picture of something that's completely white, okay, that has no color, but it's just completely white, the camera wants to make it look like
Gray.
it wants to make it look like gray. To be more exact, it is 18% gray. That's the photographic standard. Okay, and that's also what this camera wants to do. So when it is looking at a piece of paper that is just completely white, which actually has a 92% reflectance, not exactly 100%, it wants to make it look like 18% gray. Because that's the average scene, okay, or the brightness of an average scene on a photograph. So that's why if I want a piece of white paper to look actually white, I have to increase the exposure to compensate for the camera's own tendency to try to make everything look 18% gray. So just a little off topic. Okay, so the mood selector opens up once a particular emotion is selected, it opens up the mood level screen. Okay, so we are now 1, 2, 3. We're 3 levels down from screen 1, which is the initial screen. All right, when the mood level screen is done, when it closes, a screen can only close to go back to the screen that opens it in the first place. So when the mood level screen closes, it has no choice but to close to the mood selector screen. But this link here, okay, can cause an event from the perspective of the mood selector screen, and the event that is being caused, I'm switching back to the blocks here, is called other screen closed. So this particular block or this particular event is triggered when this action happens. Is that okay? All right. So that's what we would need to do, is to use this to intercept that, oh, we just got back from the mood level screen, so let's do some processing here. Now, the only problem here, well, potential problem, I should say. Potential problem is you might have other screens, okay, so I'm just, this is not in the test, but you might have other screens that can potentially be opened by the mood selector screen. So if you return from any other screen, the same block gets executed. So that's why in this block here, other screen closed, it also gives you a parameter of other screen name to tell you, oh, we just got back from that other screen. So depending on which screen, or depending on how you got back to this screen, you can do the processing differently. That part is not important for the test because we only have one screen that the mood selector screen can open. So that means when we come back, we can only be coming back from that other screen. But in general, okay, you might need to check it. So I'm just going to do the code right this time, just to show you guys, how to do it properly, is to use an if-then statement so that you know, or you are sensitive to which screen you got back from. So we use the text compare and check for equality, and we want the other screen name to be exactly the same name as this item here. So we just duplicate and put it here. So this confirms that we just got back from the mood level screen or the mood intensity screen. Then we do some processing. Well, according to the description here, whoops, not this one, but this one here, there's not really a whole lot to process. When the mood level screen returns to the mood selector screen, close the screen called mood selector with a result that is a list of 2 items. The first item of the list is the emotion selected, and the second item is the level or intensity of the emotion. So let's figure out how to do that. So we know that we have to close this screen in this case, so we just go here, and we have 2 options to close a screen. We can either just close the screen without any value, or we can close the screen with a particular result, which is what we want. We want the result to be a list, so we go to lists here, and then we make a list of 2 items. The first item is the emotion, which is already the selection property of the list view. So we go to the list view emotions, and then we go to the selection. That's the first item. What about the second item? The second item is supposed to be the intensity, that is the close value of the level screen, the mood level screen, which is reflected here. So the result of other screen closed is the result of the close screen event, the close screen action. Are we doing okay so far with this code or not? Do we have any questions? Let me just kind of show you the rest of this code here. Is that okay? All right. Any questions? Any questions? Okay. So I'm just going to put some comments here. I'll just add a comment. Okay. This is the result from the screen just closed that trigger this event. Okay. So this way we know what the result is compared to the event itself. Okay. Yep.
So your first part that you're asking for is coming from this screen, but the second part is coming from a subsequent screen
Yep.
that is closing and sending that information to the first screen.
Correct.
Okay.
So in the, let me go back to the document view. So what's happening is in the mood level screen, as soon as you click a particular mood level and you say save, it will close this screen. Okay, so it will close the screen, go back to the mood selector screen. But the mood selector screen will also close automatically without having any user interaction. It will close to go back to the logger screen. But when the mood level screen closes, it will report just the level. But when this screen closes, it will report back both the emotion and also the level as a list. So this is the result of this particular close. So when this closes, we'll go back to the logger screen. But this time with a list of two items, the first item being the emotion, and then the second item being the level of the emotion. Is that okay? In other words, we have a cascading of closing. Once we close the mood level screen, it will cascade through mood selector to go all the way back to logger.
So those three spots in the result, whatever that information is, that's the information that's going to be when you open another screen.
Right.
In those else statements. That's the data that's coming from whatever this procedure did is going to be coming in as your first element in your list.
That's correct, because if you look at the if then else, they are only saying basically, do we have any sub items under this particular emotion? So the else is basically saying, okay, we do not have any sub items. This is the lowest level that we can get to. So because it's the lowest level we can get to, since we cannot display any other sub emotions, so when somebody clicks on that one, it is time to select and adjust the intensity because there are no sub items under that. So that's why it starts up at the other screen. But because, okay, let's switch back to the. So when the mood selector screen starts the mood level screen, it still remembers. Okay, all the components are still active. So the mood selector screen still remembers which emotion has been selected. So when we close the mood level screen with the level as our close value, when we get back to the mood selector screen, it still remembers which emotion it has been selected already. So that's why in the blocks, I can, oops, wrong part to scroll. So in the blocks here, I can then ask the list view and say, okay, tell me what item is selected. It is still selected at that point. and the user has no chance of interacting at that point because this is just coming back from the other screen. So we don't have to worry about, oh, but what if the user picks something else? There's no chance of user interaction at this point. Is that okay?
I got it.
Okay. But this may be a technique that you want to incorporate into your project, because as you drill into more and more subscreens to get the information that is needed for a screen that you have already started earlier, this is how you can pass the information back, and you can bypass levels by saying, okay, when this screen closes back to me, I will close automatically, but I will add the information from that screen that just closed to my own result value as I close to go back to the previous screen. So this way you can have a cascade of those things. So from the user's perspective, you're drilling into more and more details, but once you specify the last level of detail and you click save or make it effective, it can go all the way back to the screen that actually needs to go, that you need to go back to, and you don't need to click save, 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 save with all the screens in between. Is that okay or not? Just the concept. Yep. So getting back to just the paper, I just want to make sure that we can see this kind of in a more graphical way. So let's say this is your own project. You have one screen here, another screen. This is just a splash screen, so we usually don't go back to the splash screen very often. But this is your main screen. In your main screen, let's say you start up a config screen. In your config screen, one thing that you might want to configure is, I don't know, let's say potential users, okay? And in the user screen, you have a new user screen, so new user. Okay, so let's say this is the last screen that you want to get to, and you just register a new user on this screen, and you click yes, save, or I'm done, finish. Okay, so when you're finished, it can only go back to the user screen. So the question is, well, if you have just added a user, do you want to go back to the user screen, or do you want to go straight all the way back to the main screen? Let's say you want to go all the way back to the main screen. So that means this close, going back to the user screen, will trigger the action to automatically go back to the config screen, and then from the config screen they can trigger a close all the way back to the main screen. Now whether this is what you want to do with one single stroke, with one single click here to say finish, and you go all the way to the main screen or not, or do you want to go through the user screen which has its own finish, and then the config screen which has its own finish, and you want the end user to go step by step, that's up to you, okay? It depends on the application, it depends on whether it makes sense or not to have the user to click finish like 3 times to go back to the main screen, or whether it makes sense to have one click of a finish and goes all the way straight back to the main screen. But you have that control because the blocks can do this automatically.
Because it identifies the name of the screen that you want to go to and the data that you set in.
Correct. And as a part of the data, you can even use that part to indicate should I stop or not. Because now it's up to each individual screen to process the information and go like, should I stop or should I close right away to go back to the previous screen? You have complete control over that. Okay. Is that okay so far? Okay. All right. So at this point, I think it's a good time to start up a virtual machine, just to see how the code works at this point. Just want to see that we can go back to the logger screen, even though the logger screen doesn't do a single thing. Or do you guys want me to finish the whole project and then we can test it in one single swoop? Finish it? Okay, so let's go ahead and finish it. All right, so let's go back to the instruction here. We are done with linking the mood selector screen to the mood level screen, and now we just have to link from the mood selector screen to the main logger screen. So we want to display this information here based on the date, time, emotion, and also the level. Okay. All right. Furthermore, whenever the time picker or date picker is updated, the label gets updated as well. So we just want to make it a procedure. That's what I would do, is turn it into a procedure. So this way the procedure can be called from multiple places. All right, so this is the last thing we have to do, or one of the last. So now let's go back to the logger screen. And once again, in the logger screen, we are going to intercept other screen closed, okay? And I'll just do the right thing and actually use a conditional statement to check which screen closed to get back to me, even though it's not needed, because in our case, the logger screen can only start the mood selector screen at this point. But this is a better approach to do it, just to be sure that we only do this processing when it is coming back from the mood selector screen. So screen mood selector, that's the name. So you have to spell it out, screen mood selector. All right. So if we just got back from the mood selector screen, this is the kind of processing that we want to do. But remember, I don't want to specify the logic here. I want to use a procedure or a subroutine to do it. So I define a procedure, which is to update the label. So we just say this is for updating log entry label. Okay. And there are several things we have to do. Well, just really one thing to do. We just want to update the label itself. So we go to label 1. We want to set the text of the label to something. Okay. Now this time, if I switch back to the instruction, we got on a certain date at a certain time, I feel an emotion such that I, another level, and then a closing period. So we got 8 items in this particular string. So we need to go back here, go to text, and just piece everything together using a join. But remember, we got 8 items, so it's gonna be tedious. This is a little bit tedious. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to specify the actual strings here, and every other one is going to be a literal string. I think that I'm missing one item. Maybe we have 8 items. Well, we can always fix that later. Okay. I just want to get rid of the first one. Well, let me do it. Here we go. Okay. All right. So let's go back to the text here, on, and then the space, which is going to be followed by a date here. So that's just going to be a date picker 1, and then you just need to find out what is the date that is selected. Okay, it doesn't give you that option. Well, suppose you can just play. You can know text that refers to the actual display text. So what you need to do in this case is to pick out an instant, which is represented by the date being picked, and convert that into the time that we want to display. That means we need a clock component. Let me see if there are other ways to do this, okay, because that seems a little bit kind of. So we got year. This is just the text on the button itself, which is not the time. Returns the name of the month that was last picked using the date picker in text format. Okay, that's not what we want either. So I don't think we have an option, unless you want to. Oh, there we go. Set date to display. Allow the user to set the date to be displayed. Okay, set date to display from instant. Set the date from the instant to be displayed when the date picker opens. So that's for selecting the date. Launch picker is just to launch the pop-up. So none of these is going to be helpful. All right. So to do what we want to do, now we need a clock component, which is under sensors, or let's see, yeah, under sensors, we have clock. Switch back to the blocks, and we need to use the clock's ability to convert an instant into a time format. So we want to convert an instant into a time, and you can just pick one of these that is already done. So we can pick out this one here, and then the instant itself is going to be coming from the date picker. So we just go to date picker instant, like that one. So this part, it will say on, and then the space on a certain month, a certain day of a certain year. Go back to at a certain time. So we want to put a space here, and then add another space. And then we want to do something like this one, because this time we want to specify the actual time. So we go to clock again, and this time we want to specify just the time. Format time, text representing the time of an instant. Okay, so that's perfect. Put it here, and this time we go to time picker 1 and choose the instant of the time picker. And then the next one is a comma, and then I feel, and then a space. So I just Control C, Control V. So this is the part where you have to kind of display the emotion itself. So that means we have to remember the emotion too, okay? Because otherwise, there's no way to update it when the time picker has changed. All right, so if this has to be remembered, we need a global variable to do this. And so we go to variables, and we just say, okay, we need a global variable to remember the emotion and intensity. And intensity, and we'll make it an empty list to begin with, or we can make it a list of 2 empty items. Okay, so we'll make a list of empty items. If you don't like empty items, you can always say not selected, okay? Or just not available, not applicable as a default. Okay, there we go. So when the other screen closed, the first thing we want to do is to grab the result and put it into the global variable. So we go to here, and we say we want to set the global variable emotion and intensity to whatever this result is, because it's supposed to be a list of exactly 2 items. And once we have this as a global variable, then we can go ahead and just make use of that here, because after the I feel, we have to extract the emotion, which we go to lists, and we pick out select list item. The list itself is the global variable named emotion and intensity. The index is 1 because that's where we put the emotion in the list. It is the first item. And then we switch back to the instruction here, such that okay, so copy and paste this part into here. And then we have the second item as the intensity. So I'm just going to be lazy, duplicate this block, and just change the index to 2. And we need a single period to end the sentence. So we have 1 more item in the string. This gets a little bit challenging because I can't scroll to the bottom of this selection box. Okay, I might need to. Yep, that won't do it either. Alrighty. I cannot get another item into here.
If you bring the string over and you can select which level, so you should be able to scroll down at least to the near bottom and insert it there. But it will insert a little opening at that location on the join. So
I think you could grab the border of the box there and move that small box out.
Oh, there we go.
Even better.
That works. Have you run into this issue before?
Yeah.
That's the joy of graphical programming, where everything is drag and drop. All right, so that's how we format the entire string. Okay. And the procedure doesn't do any good unless you call that. Okay, so we have to remember to call the procedure after we set the global variable. So we just have to call the procedure from here. So that's one. But I also want to change the label every single time I change the date or the time. So we go to date picker 1 and say after the date is set, we also want to call that procedure. And then the same thing with time. So we go to the time picker and say after the time is set, go call the same procedure. So this way I can define the procedure once and have it triggered or called from multiple places. I don't have to copy and paste my code, all over the place. Are there any questions at this point about this code? We only got one thing remaining to do. The one thing that we have to do is to save a log entry. I don't want it to be very fancy, so I just want to use a tinydb component to retrieve the value of the tag log. This value should be a list. If it is not found, start with an empty list. Add the current text value of the label as an item to the beginning of this list, because when we go through the log, we are usually more interested in the recent log entries rather than the really old entries. So that's why I sorted reversed in the reverse order. And then we want to save the updated list to tinydb. Okay. So we switch back to the blocks here, and we got one more button to deal with. Okay. And the first thing it needs to do, well, you can do the whole thing in one single block, and let me show you how to do it in one single block. First thing we need to do is to add a tinydb, which is under storage, into the project, into this screen. Now we can do it with one single script. So the last operation, which is what we need to specify as the outermost block, is we are storing a value into tinydb1, and the tag name is log. If I double check here, yep, it is just log. So we go to text, we specify the tag is just log, and the value to store is going to be a list, but the list is going to have one extra item at the beginning. Oh, it doesn't let me do that. Okay. Okay, I was hoping that I can do everything with only one single huge block. It doesn't let me do it because inserting an item into a list does not return a value. So I kind of have to separate it into two parts, which also means I will need to use a local variable to store the value that I just retrieved from the tinydb. So we have to put all of this in here. Okay, insert, this is the actual list here, which is my local variable. So I have to set a name for this. You can just call this log entries, okay? And it will be initialized to tinydb1 getting the value of that tag, which we already know is log. So we duplicate the name log, put it here. And if the tag is not found, we want it to be an empty list because it's just an empty log at that point. So we want to create an empty list to make it the value if tag not found. Then the next thing we need to do is to add the first item, which is going to be just the label. Whatever the label is, we just add it to the list as the first item. So we just retrieve the text of label 1 and put it here. And now we can store the whole thing. Like so. Okay. Okay, so let's just kind of go through this code one more time to look at all the three main steps. The first main step here is the initialization of the local variable called log entries, which is just retrieving, okay, if there is a log already saved in tinydb, retrieve that, it should be a list already. If there's none created yet, go ahead and give me an empty list. which is representing an empty log. The next item we do is we're inserting the current text label, the text of the current label as the first item. So it will push all of the items to the second, third, and so on. So we'll push all of that stuff onto the log entries local variable. The third item that we do here is to basically store the longer list, which is longer by one item now. We want to store that back into TinyDB under the tag name of log. So we're just updating that log entry in the TinyDB. So that should do it. And the last item here is open-ended. Present a button in the main logger screen to review all log entries. This mechanism should let the user scroll to review all entries. Due to the way entries are saved, the most recent entry should be displayed first. So you got a few ways to do it. Okay, it's up to you to decide how you want to do it. Because the description says it's open-ended. Choose whatever way you want to do it. Excuse me. I am just going to use a list picker to do it. Okay, you can use some other mechanism. List picker is just a quick and easy way to do it. So I will go to user interface, use a list picker, and change this one to change the text on it to review log entries, and go back to the blocks. The reason why I chose a list picker is because with a list picker, it gives me the option of before picking, which comes in pretty handy in this case. So in before picking, which is the event that is raised when someone clicks on the button, but before it displays everything. So this is the time when I can initialize all the elements. So I go to list picker again, and I set the elements to, well, I'm just going to duplicate this code here. We just retrieve everything from TinyDB, under the tag name of log, and use it to initialize all the elements of list picker 1. So by the time it displays the option, it will have all of those log entries already there. And if I remember correctly, list picker has its own built-in scroll bar, so it will just scroll if there are more entries than one screen can display. All right, so I think that should be it. So let's go ahead and build the APK file. Because it has multiple screens, you can't really debug it using the AI companion. And on the side, we're going to start up the virtual machine. Okay, so we do have a new Android Studio thing already installed, but I'm not going to go there, so we'll just go ahead and use this one. Go to, save file under the temp folder, that's good. Under tools, and start up the main tool. And if there are any updates to do, I'm not going to do it right now because I just need to start up my virtual machine. And then on the other side, I am going to start up ADB. So go to Android SDK, go to Platform Tools, ADB Start Server, and let's check all the devices. And here's the virtual machine starting up. We'll go ahead and type the command adb install-r temp boot logger1.apk. Here we go. So it should run now. I'm going to install the app. Switch back here. Go to mood selector 1. So scroll up. Mood mood logger 1. And it does change to start with the logger screen, which is great. We look at the date, it's already set to the current date, click OK. And you can see how the string is already updated on April 27th, blah, blah, blah. I feel not applicable, such that I am not applicable.
But your time's off.
Huh?
Your time is off.
The time is off because I did not use, it thinks it's 5 p.m. because that's a GMT, or these days we call it UTC, but it's the same thing. I didn't set the time zone of the Debian distribution correctly, so it doesn't know that we are in Pacific Standard Time. It just knows that without knowing what time zone we are in, it just defaults to UTC. Okay. So now we click Select Mood. Okay, so we click Select Mood, and we just click. Well, since I got this almost done, I'm going to click Happy, and I will say Content.
Powerful.
No, I never feel powerful. I feel content. That's the best I can hope for, is content. Okay, so you can see how it switches to the mood level automatically because it doesn't have any subcategories. So I can select a mood intensity, and I'm gonna say noticed, but let it go short. I'm still thinking clearly. I need that to say to teach a class. And then click Save. Now this is the important part. When I click Save, it should not just close mood level, it should also close mood selector and go straight to the logger screen and update the label to reflect the emotion and also the intensity of the emotion. Okay, so we click Save, and we got back here in the display on April 27th at blah blah blah. I feel content such that I notice the emotion but let it go shortly, thinking clearly. Okay, great. Now let's review the log entries. There should be nothing here. That's good, okay, because it is the first time I run this app. It's all empty. Click the back button, save the entry. Now we have one entry to display. Okay, but what if I save it again and say and backdate this one to a few days ago and change the mood to I don't know, surprised. Okay, and let's just say it is confused, and I'm really confused, cannot think and act on the emotion, just completely locked down. Okay, and I'm going to change the time of an entry to 1 a.m. I woke up from a confusing dream, okay, that's all. Save the entry. But it's still not gonna do it right here because because the ordering is not based on the date of the entry, it's based on when I logged the entry. So it's doing it correctly, even though it looks kind of weird because I backdated a particular entry. Okay, so that's the whole thing. So what do you guys think? Should I sell it? Any questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like the next video, like if you have you on the local news, a local teacher so sad makes millions.
Well, these days, if you make $1 million, you don't make it to the news anymore. You have to make at least, like hundreds of millions to make it to the news. Yep.
Are we going to do a review before the final? Because I felt like there were some elements that seemed unexplained in this test.
Okay.
In my opinion. I
Okay,
felt
go
like
ahead.
there was just stuff that we didn't go over. I just felt very confused with a lot of the elements.
Okay, a lot of the components, you mean?
Yeah. Like, well, I mean, for example, you had to explain the whole close screen, go here, go there. From talking to another classmate, I heard that was another issue as well. I had that problem.
Okay.
as well, so, I was just wondering if we're going to do a review for the final. So it's a bit fresher, I guess you could say.
Okay, so we want a refresher basically.
Yeah.
Okay, we can certainly do that.
Okay.
In fact, okay, this is what I'm gonna do.
I'm pretty sure I did not do good on this just by the review.
Well, I thought I went over this one, because we already had that app, or we already had the homework assignment.
Mhm.
Remember the dividing thing with the
Yeah.
remainder? That one links to what we just did. How do you intercept the closing of one screen, and how do you open another screen, and how do you pass values between the screens. So it really is already explained, but not in the combination that we need to use in this particular homework.
Gotcha.
So, but we can certainly go over the concepts, that's definitely a good thing to do. So what I will do here in Moodle is I will put it on the top here. So this way we don't have to search through the whole thing. So under stuff useful to the whole semester, I'm gonna add, let me see, it's gonna be a wiki. And it's gonna be topics to go over before final exam. Okay. Go ahead and add your entry or suggestions of what to go over before the final exam. And we want this to be collaborative wiki, which means everybody has a chance to update and change it. First page name, okay. Title of the first page, leave page. Okay, it didn't save it. I have to do it again. One more time. Wiki topics to go over for final exam. I'm going to skip description. First page name is topics. Format. Okay, default is HTML. Okay, so that's probably good. Restrict access, no restriction. Save and return to course. So now you guys can give it a try if you want to. So go to topics to go over before final exam if you have a computer already open and you're on Moodle, and see if you can edit it, because I think everybody in class should be able to edit at this point. So if you have any entries that you want to add to the wiki page, go ahead and do it. Okay. Any other questions? No other questions? So I guess with this particular project, or the exam, locating which part of the code to modify, based on my code, is a little bit of a challenge by itself. Okay. Because in the code, it is a little bit messy. Locating these 3 blocks and knowing that this is how you attach. Okay, let's change this. Instead of closing the screen over there, let's open another screen. That may be one of the challenges, is to just locate that point. Yep.
It threw me off of the exam when you said locate on an emotion and click on it, and she goes to the screen. I thought you had to choose one emotion. That's what threw me off of the exam. So I didn't know it was, just open another screen because there was another screen. So just don't get out there. That's okay. Because
Okay.
sometimes the wording on this is like, you want this emotion, not just open another screen.
Would it help if I finish the project first and then upload the APK file? So this way you guys can just download, install the APK, and observe the behavior of the APK file. So this way you know what I want the app to do,
Yes.
and then code it in AIA. So instead of using the text description, okay, we can do that for the final exam. So I can give you the APK file. There's a very slight chance that someone can take the APK file and reverse engineer the whole thing. You know, so there's a way to do it, okay? You know, because after all, it is Java code, okay? It's Java bytecode, and you can reverse engineer Java bytecode back into Java. And once you look at the Java code, you can reverse engineer that back into the AIA format manually. But to go through that process may be more time consuming than just doing the project from scratch. So I know it's doable, but I'm not worried about it. Anyone who can do that deserves an A in this class anyways. Okay, fine, you can have your A. You can have your A. The only part that I worry about is a paid service to do it. On the other hand, I'm not too worried because how many dollars do you pay per unit? 42. Okay, so this is a 4-unit class, so you paid $168. So to get someone to reverse engineer, any code, $168 is not going to get you anything. So you have to pay more money than you would have paid for this class already to finish the final exam, to have someone to reverse engineer the APK file back to the AIA file. I don't think I have to worry about that either. Now, if this project is worth like $2 million, I can see people doing it. I mean, you just pay somebody a few $1,000 and say reverse engineer this whole thing, and it's worth $2 million. Yeah, go ahead and do that. But for a school project, I don't think that's going to happen. Anything else? Any other topics you guys want me to talk about? Okay. How is your project coming along?
Time consuming.
Sorry?
Time consuming.
Time consuming. Well, welcome to app development. That's the whole point. This is nothing compared to using Java either. If we were using Java, we'll still be stuck doing something much more elementary compared to what we are doing already at this point. Okay, anything else? I actually thought of one thing to say, but then I forgot what I was about to say. So it's just, the train just kind of left the station. I like that movie, Inside Out, where they have the train of thought.
Oh, yeah.
And it only runs when the main character is awake. When she sleeps, the train stops because you don't have a train of thought anymore when you sleep. It's a pretty cool movie. I like the general idea of the movie, but I don't like the way they think broccoli is disgusting. That's just a Bush thing, okay? In general, I think the population does not think broccoli is disgusting. So, any other topics you guys want to kind of go over? Okay, one thing that you might want to do, just to prepare for the final exam, is to go through all the components that I have used, that I have mentioned, and just make sure that you know how those components work. Yep.
Can you go over really briefly how you take a text element and you send it to JavaScript to be validated?
We can do that next Monday. Or, if you're going to stay here in the lab time, we can investigate, but I won't be able to tell you for sure how to do it because I can just go over the text, the description stuff, along with you. Okay, so we can do that during the lab time. I just need a little bit more fuel before I can do that. Okay, but that's a good topic. Anything else? Nothing else? Okay. So is anyone planning to publish anything like at the end of this class, your project? Okay, so you are planning to publish your app? Okay, good. And I cannot remember what your app is.
I have a blackjack card counting system.
Okay.
So basically what happens is it starts out and it goes through the cards and you basically set how many decks you want. And then it displays each card and you just count it and it tells you if it's plus or minus off the high-low system.
Okay.
The one thing I don't know about is on when I did the proposal, I said that I wanted to put down how much you should be betting. And I don't know if I should do that or not, because then you could, I don't know if it would make you liable or.
Okay, the first thing you want to do in the splash screen is to make it very clear that this app is only for entertainment purposes.
Okay.
And you have no liability. You do not claim the accuracy and the math or statistics basis of this application. It's only for entertainment purposes. Just make it very clear. I don't think you can actually wiggle out of those legal liabilities just by saying I'm not liable. This is only for fun. But having that disclaimer may help. But you can always just say that my app is only here to track the cards and give you the probability of what is going to be the next one, or whether in the game using the rules of blackjack, whether it is statistically speaking, does it make sense to have another card or not? But each person has his or her own luck and fortune and stuff like that.
Right, those are going to be in there. Just as far as like going in, like if you're sitting at a table from $10 to $500, and the plus is, let's say, 5, then you should be betting like $100.
Okay.
So putting something like that in there, I don't know if I should be doing that. So I think I'm going to publish it as is right now and just add the amount for the class.
Do you specify the number of decks too?
Yeah, you can select 1 through 6.
Oh wow! So you have some kind of internal representation to keep track of what cards has been played.
Yeah, basically there's I did a tiny DB, and I have every single card that's selected. So if you select one, and it basically counts 6 decks, so it goes through 1 through 6.
Right.
And then if you select one, it checks the database or the tiny DB and says, okay, has 1 through 6 already been played? If it does, then it calls a procedure and runs a procedure all over again and selects a different card.
That's a pretty complex, processing. That's pretty good. I'm impressed. Well, if they won't let people, remembering the cards, I'm pretty sure they won't let people run this app in the casino.
Yeah.
If they spot it, what do they do if they spot people counting cards?
Kick you out.
They just kick you out?
Yeah, they kick you out, and you.
Two muscle guys, one with each of your arms would just kind of lift you outside.
Well, yeah, and
I don't know if they take your band or not, but.
well, yeah,
You're banned from that casino, and maybe the word will get out to everybody else to also be alerted.
Well, it's interesting how they can ban people and kick people out when it is potentially detrimental to their profit, but they don't really tell you when you're a normal customer that your chances of winning on any table with any type of game is only 60% or 50 or 20. Sorry?
It's almost as though casinos are biased towards making profit.
Well, yeah, the house.
And semi-illegally as well. Well, it's almost like they're run by gangsters.
It's gambling. It's already sort
Yeah.
of morally
They're
dubious.
not going to offer a game if they're not favored to win.
Well, the same thing with a lotto game, but at least with lotto, they would actually give you the chances. They would tell you, what are the chances you can win this prize, that prize, and that prize, and that prize. So if you understand the statistics and go like, oh, so that means I'm going to lose anyway. It's just that occasionally I might get something back, then you can decide not to do it. So it's one thing to tell people that first, and it's a whole different thing when they don't tell you that.
But they always advertise the winning.
Oh, with lotto?
Yeah, well.
With casinos and stuff like
casinos,
that?
They always advertise how many winners they've already had. And
Yep.
you could be next, and, just enticing the market.
Yeah, I think gambling is one of the worst addictions, because there's no sign. It's non-chemical. There's no substance. People do not twitch. Okay, and yet it can be just as damaging. So it's a bad thing when it becomes an addiction. I mean, if you just go play like okay, I have $20 in my pocket. I would just spend all $20. I mean, hey, there's no harm in that. Some people can make it last a long time. $20 in the pocket. I just changed it to all quarters or game tokens. Hit the arcade. $20. I mean, I can be there almost for the whole day. I'll beat all the kids here with a Street Fighter, and I'll keep playing the whole day with like 2 coins. Just playing Street Fighter, and here comes along like the 6-7-year-olds trying to beat me. Get in line, kid.
Some arcade machines are like pool tables. You run the machine, so if someone wants to play against you, they have to pay your way in as well.
I did not know that.
I've been to arcades like that.
Okay.
It used to be. I don't know anymore. I've been to arcades a while.
But the buffet is also a good place to go because it is actually quote unquote subsidized by the casino. Because when you bring your family, friends, and whatnot, some people who actually gamble, they want to stay, but everybody else says, "There's nothing to do here. I want to go home." Oh, let's go hit the buffet again. It's only $10. They got prime ribs and lobsters. Oh, $10. Okay, we'll go again. Yeah. I wonder when they will start to have a vomitorium.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing else is that now, if you look at most of the casinos also have arcades. I mean, while some people are playing, but like, hey, look, there's a really good racing car game, and you can go play at the arcade.
Yep. They want to keep the whole family entertained. Alrighty. So I'm going to stop the lecture recording. And